I grew up thinking I was just the housekeeper. I slept near the laundry room, called my bosses sir and ma'am, and I thought it was normal. Until one day, I heard something that shattered everything I believed to be true. Hi, my name is Mia, and this is the story of how I found out I was the daughter of the man who told me to clean the floors of his own house. Grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and come with me. Because this story doesn't start with love, it starts with silence. I was 13 the first time someone called me to help, right in front of the family I thought was mine. I stood frozen in the hallway, holding a tray of lemonade. Mrs. Lane's voice didn't flinch. "Oh, she's not one of ours," she said with a smile, like I was just another appliance in the house. Something about the way her words sliced the air stuck with me. I laughed it off. I always laugh things off. But that sentence, it stayed, like a stain on a white uniform. They gave me chores, not hugs. I folded their laundry, scrubbed their bathrooms, served at their dinner parties, all while wearing a name tag that wasn't mine. Mia. It read, short, simple, forgettable. They said I was lucky to live in a house with marble floors and chandeliers. I used to believe them. I thought love looked like leftovers in the fridge and hand-me-downs that didn't quite fit. I thought maybe if I worked hard enough, I'd earn a seat at the table one day. But my place was always by the sink. Mr. James Lane's, the man of the house, was different. He never yelled at me, but he never looked me in the eye either. When he walked into a room, everyone straightened up. Even me. Especially me. I used to wonder why I cared so much about what he thought. Why I memorized his coffee order. Why I felt guilty when he seemed tired. Looking back, it wasn't loyalty. It was a longing I couldn't explain. One afternoon, while dusting the piano, I overheard it. His son, Aaron, laughing with a friend. Honestly, she looks more like my dad than I do. The joke landed heavy in my stomach, even as they kept laughing. I ducked behind the curtains, heart racing. I pressed my hand against my face, like I could erase whatever it was they saw in me. I didn't know what to do with the thought, so I did what I always did. I swallowed it whole. That night, I stared at my reflection for hours. I traced my jawline, my eyes, my nose, searching for something familiar, something borrowed. Was it just in my head? Was I chasing ghosts in the shape of genetics? Or had everyone known something I didn't? My skin crawled with questions I didn't have the courage to ask. Not yet, but something had cracked. And once it cracked, it didn't seal. I started noticing things. How Mrs. Lane's always avoided being alone with me. How Mr. Lane's would go silent whenever I entered the room. How none of the other staff ever questioned my presence, as if my role had been scripted before I was born. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. But coincidences don't last this long. Coincidences don't stare back in the mirror. At dinner that week, Mr. Lane's dropped his fork when I accidentally brushed against his arm. Just a touch. Just for a second. But the way he looked at me, like I was a ghost wearing a familiar face. I mumbled an apology, my hands shaking as I poured water. The table fell silent. Mrs. Lane's stared at her plate like it held all the answers. No one spoke. But the silence, it screamed. I went back to my room that night, the small one by the laundry room, and pulled out the only picture I had of my mom. She died when I was 7. I'd been told she was just a maid too. But in the photo, she's smiling next to Mr. Lane's, both younger, both glowing. He has his hand on her back. Too familiar. Too soft. My throat tightened. A theory began to take shape, and it terrified me. Maybe I wasn't just the help. Maybe I'd never been. I used to think silence was safety, that if no one spoke, nothing could break. But the quiet in that house, it was heavy. It wasn't peace, it was pressure. I'd tiptoe around the edges of every room, learning to exist without leaving a mark. Even as a child, I knew how to disappear. And I thought that was normal. I thought invisibility was love, just quiet. The other kids, Aaron and Camille, called me by my name, but never with warmth. Mia, can you grab my shoes? Mia, clean this up. Never please, never thank you. Just commands, like I was part of the furniture. Camille once asked why I always wore old clothes. I told her they were hand-me-downs. She blinked and said, "Oh, I didn't know we donated to staff." That word, staff, like I wasn't even a person in her eyes. Just a role. I started collecting moments, tiny, almost invisible clues, like how Mrs. Lanes never hugged me, but also never let anyone else discipline me. How Mr. Lanes refused to look at my report cards, but paid for my school supplies. How they never said, "We love you," but never let me leave. I lived in that house, but I didn't belong there. I was too close to be a stranger, too distant to be family. I was something else. I asked the housekeeper once if she knew my mother well. She froze mid-sweep. She was sweet, she said, finally not meeting my eyes. Quiet, always kept to herself. I asked how she died. The answer, it was sudden. That was it. Like death was just another item on a to-do list. Sudden, clean, untouchable. But I could feel it in my bones. There was more to that story. More than they wanted me to know. The next day, I waited until no one was home and crept into the study. I was shaking so badly I had to sit down. I pulled open drawers, one by one, looking for, I don't know, proof, a letter, a confession. What I found was a photo album buried beneath stacks of old files. I flipped through pages of birthdays, vacations, family portraits. And then there it was, a picture of my mom again. Pregnant. Alone. I'd seen that photo 100 times, but never like this. I stared at that photo for hours. My hand brushed over her belly, over me. The date on the back made my heart stop. I was born 3 months after that photo was taken, and it had been tucked away, like a secret that never got to breathe. That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept hearing Aaron's voice in my head. She looks more like my dad than I do. And for the first time, I started to believe he might be right. I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. So I went to the woman who'd raised me. Not Mrs. Lanes, the other one. Rosa. She'd been my comfort, my lullaby in human form. I asked her straight. Was my mom involved with Mr. Lanes? Her face paled. Don't ask questions you're not ready to answer, Mia. I begged. She cried, then whispered, Your mother loved deeply, but it ruined her. She left the room before I could ask more. I walked the garden path until my legs ached. Every flower bed, every tree had been shaped by someone else's vision, just like me. I was molded into something polite, quiet, manageable. But I was done being manageable. If the truth hurt, so be it. If it burned, let it. I wasn't going to spend my life as someone else's ghost. And that's when I knew I wouldn't find peace until I found the truth. Even if it broke me in the process. I stopped being scared of the truth the moment I realized how much of my life had been built on lies. Not the loud, obvious kind. The quiet ones. The ones you tuck under bedtime stories and polite smiles. Lies so gentle they feel like care. Lies so old they feel like home. But they rot everything underneath. And I was done living in rot. I started with the attic. Dusty boxes, brittle paper, the smell of forgotten years. I dug through school records, receipts, newspaper clippings, anything that might whisper a secret. Then I found it, an old ledger with names and dates. My mom's name appeared more times than I expected. Not just as a maid. There were entries marked personal assistant and travel companion. My stomach churned. The lines between work and something more had been blurred for years. I called an old gardener who used to work at the house. I remembered his soft voice, his kindness. He picked up after the second ring. Mia, he said, surprised. I asked about my mother. There was a pause. She loved that garden, he said quietly. It was the only place she felt safe. I asked if she and Mr. Lanes were close. His silence screamed louder than any answer. Then he said, Everyone knew. No one said a thing. I hung up with shaking hands. My heart thudded, so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't inventing this. People knew. They just let me grow up in the shadows of their silence. I wasn't just the help. I was the hidden, the inconvenient, the consequence. And suddenly, I didn't know if I wanted to scream or collapse. That night, I stood outside his office door, listening to him talk on the phone. His voice, so calm, so familiar. He laughed. He planned. He lived like I didn't exist. Like my mother had never existed. That's what broke me, the ease of his forgetting. I wanted to burst in and demand answers. But instead, I turned and walked away. Not because I was weak. Because I needed to walk in ready. With proof. With fire. I found an old envelope tucked behind a frame in my room. Inside, a faded letter written by my mom. No date. No greeting. Just a line. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't protect you. I couldn't breathe. My mother had known. She tried to leave breadcrumbs in a house built to erase them. She ended the letter with, "You deserve more than silence, Mia. Go find your name." I folded the letter and placed it in the inside pocket of my jacket like armor. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced the question. "Are you my father?" The words felt foreign in my mouth. Heavy. Dangerous. Sacred. I repeated them until I could say them without flinching. I wasn't asking for love. I was asking for truth. And I would no longer accept anything less. I made my way down the stairs like I was walking into a war zone. Every picture on the wall felt like a betrayal. Every echo of laughter a reminder of what I'd never had. I knocked on his door. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. He opened it with a raised brow. "Mia," he asked, like I was just the maid who brought coffee. I stared at him, jaw tight, and then I asked the question that would change everything. "Are you my father?" For a moment, he just stared at me. No blink, no breath, just silence, so thick it pressed against my chest. I expected denial, anger, something, but he didn't flinch. He didn't lie. He just looked down at the floor, hands in his pockets, and said, "It wasn't supposed to come out like this." That was his first sentence to me, not as a boss, but as a father. A coward's confession, wrapped in regret. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I gripped the chair behind me like it could anchor me to this world. "So it's true," I whispered, my voice breaking into something that didn't even sound like me. "You let me grow up scrubbing your floors, taking your orders, and you said nothing." He closed his eyes. "I thought I was protecting you." Protecting me? By erasing me? I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the ache inside me had nowhere else to go. "You let your wife humiliate me. You let your children treat me like garbage. You watched me serve dinner at your table while you sat there pretending I wasn't part of you." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "You watched your daughter suffer and did nothing." He stepped forward, and I backed away. The office felt too small, the air too thick. "I paid for your schooling. I made sure you were safe," he said, as if charity could replace paternity. "You were always taken care of." I shook my head. No, I was hidden. There's a difference. Every word I spoke felt like a match against gasoline. Years of silence were finally catching fire. Then came the part one didn't expect. He cried. Quiet, bitter tears. He wiped them away fast, like they were a weakness he couldn't afford. "I loved your mother," he said, "but I was married, and scared, and stupid. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I did was whisper, and now I'm the one paying for your mistakes." I left before he could say anything else. I walked out the front door without even looking back. The sun was blinding. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Every step I took felt like shedding a skin I never chose. I wandered the city for hours, numb, hollow, alive in the worst way. When I finally stopped, I was standing at a bus stop with no destination. That night, I slept at a friend's place. No questions, just a blanket and a couch. I stared at the ceiling, feeling everything and nothing all at once. Who was I now? Not just the maid, not just the secret. I was someone in between, someone unfinished. But for the first time, I didn't want to be finished by someone else's hand. In the days that followed, he called. He texted. He even sent flowers to my job. I ignored them all. There's no bouquet big enough to bury 18 years of abandonment. I wasn't ready to hear from him. Maybe I never would be. But what I didn't know was this. I was finally living a life that was mine. Not borrowed. Not erased. Mine. A week passed. Then 2. And then one morning, Rosa called me. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I made your favorite tea. Come if you want." I went. And when I walked through her door, she didn't hug me. She just handed me the cup, sat beside me, and let me cry. No judgment. No explanation. Just presence. It was the first time I felt like someone chose me without guilt attached. And yet, in the quiet moments, one thought haunted me. If I wasn't his maid and I wasn't his daughter, then who the hell was I? 2 months passed. I counted them in paychecks and quiet mornings. I got a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the windows crooked, but it was mine. No one told me to be quiet. No one watched my every move. I bought a second-hand mattress and a single plate. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Every corner of that place held something sacred: freedom, ownership, the sound of my own breathing. I didn't know who I was, but I knew I wasn't invisible anymore. I worked at a diner near the train station. Tips were bad, hours were long, and the manager yelled more than he smiled. But the job gave me rhythm, purpose. And on days when my feet ached and my eyes burned, I'd take out my mother's letter and read her words again. "You deserve more than silence, Mia. Go find your name." That letter lived folded in my jacket pocket, worn soft by my fingers. I found a therapist through a local clinic. Her name was Joy. She was patient, soft-spoken, and didn't flinch when I said, "I grew up in a mansion where I was treated like a maid, only to find out I was the owner's daughter." She just nodded and said, "That's a lot." That sentence alone felt like a hug, like someone finally saw how heavy my silence had been. Every week, we unpacked the stories I'd buried. The way I'd flinch when someone raised their voice. The way I apologized for existing. The way I still hesitated before sitting on nice furniture. I'd been trained to believe I didn't belong anywhere. That love had to be earned with obedience. That family was conditional. Joy told me something I wrote on a sticky note and taped to my mirror. "You don't have to shrink to be worthy." Mr. Lanes kept reaching out. Cards. Emails. Once, he even showed up outside the diner. I pretended not to see him. I wasn't ready to forgive. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through just because someone knocks. It's a long hallway, and I was still halfway down it, barefoot, bruised, and unsure if I wanted to open anything again. Then one day, a letter arrived. Not from him, from the foundation that managed his business affairs. It was an invitation to an anniversary gala, a formal event. Black tie. The kicker? I wasn't on the guest list as Mia employee. I was listed as Mia Lanes, honoree. I stared at the envelope for over an hour, wondering if it was some cruel joke. Or if maybe he was trying to rewrite the ending. I showed the invitation to Joy. She said, "This doesn't have to be closure, but it can be clarity." I didn't sleep the night before the gala. I kept imagining walking into that golden room full of people who used to see me carrying trays. People who never knew the truth. People who did. What would I say? What would I wear? What would I be? The day came. I wore a simple black dress and no jewelry. I didn't want to impress them. I wanted to reclaim myself. When I arrived, the valet didn't ask who I was. The woman at the check-in smiled and said, "Welcome, Miss Lanes." I almost laughed. 4 years, I'd cleaned this place. Tonight, I walked through its doors as a guest. And when I stepped into that ballroom, head high, something shifted in the air. Eyes turned. Whispers buzzed. But I didn't shrink. I didn't break. I wasn't the maid anymore. I wasn't the secret. I was the storm they thought would never come. The room went still when I walked in. I could feel their eyes crawling over me, trying to place where I fit in their polished version of the past. Some recognized me as the quiet girl from the kitchen. Others didn't recognize me at all. Camille and Aaron stood near the stage, whispering. Camille froze when she saw me. Aaron looked away. I didn't care. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to be heard. Mr. Lane stood on stage beside a podium. Silver hair, expensive suit, eyes that flicked to mine and froze. For a second, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had. I gave him a nod, not of forgiveness, not of affection, just acknowledgement. He cleared his throat, gave a speech about legacy and community and resilience. The usual corporate poetry. Then, as if trying to rewrite the past in a single gesture, he said, "Tonight, we honor someone who's always been part of this home, even when we failed to see it." They called my name, Mia Lanes. The syllables clanged in my chest like broken bells. I walked to the stage with steps that didn't shake, heart thudding steady. He tried to hand me the award. I looked him in the eye and didn't take it. Instead, I turned to the mic. My palms were sweating, but my voice didn't tremble. "I didn't come here for applause," I said. "I came to tell the truth." The silence was electric. I grew up in this house, not as a guest, not as a daughter, as a secret. I saw jaws tighten, eyes widen. Camille stepped back. Aaron's mouth parted, but he didn't speak. I scrubbed these floors, served these tables. I was told I should be grateful, that I was lucky, but I wasn't lucky. I was forgotten. The air was thick, unforgiving. I continued. Some people hide their shame behind money, behind silence. But silence is a kind of violence, too. I looked at Mr. Lanes. "You let me grow up thinking I was nothing. You buried my mother in shadows. You buried me." He stepped forward, whispering, "Mia, please." I shook my head. "Don't. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her. For me." My eyes scanned the crowd. I pulled out the letter, the one I carried with me every day, and unfolded it slowly. "This is from my mother. She wrote it before she died. It says, 'You deserve more than silence. Go find your name.'" That's what I did. I stepped off the stage and didn't look back. The room erupted, some in applause, some in confusion. I didn't care. I wasn't performing. I was reclaiming. Outside, the night air felt sharp, alive. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. No cameras, no trophies, just truth. And for the first time, that was enough. I walked home that night in silence, my heels clicking on the pavement like punctuation marks to a story finally told. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. I didn't know if forgiveness would ever come. But I knew who I was. Not a maid, not a mistake, not a secret. I was the daughter of a broken man and the woman who survived him. And maybe that was the truest kind of heir anyone could be. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And if you want to help me keep telling these stories, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the first pinned comment. Every cup helps me keep bringing you more stories.